Hello everyone. Welcome back to Dark Fear. Tonight we bring you 7 deeply disturbing true highway patrol horror stories that will make you question what really happens on America's loneliest stretches of asphalt when the sun goes down and civilization fades into the rearview mirror. These are not fictional tales, but documented incidents from law enforcement officers who patrol the highways where anything can happen and frequently does. Each account has been compiled from official reports, officer testimonies, and verifiable evidence that cannot be explained away or dismissed. The open road holds dangers that most drivers will never encounter, and perhaps that is fortunate. If you value authentic horror content drawn from real case files that will keep you awake at night, subscribe to Dark Fears and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the darkness that exists between the white lines. After you listen to these chilling accounts, we want to hear from you in the comments below about your own encounters on isolated highways. Now, settle in as we explore 7 cases that prove the most terrifying things on the road are not always what you can see coming. I was halfway through an overnight highway patrol shift when dispatch radioed about a stalled vehicle on Old Ridge Highway, a stretch of road no one liked working. Trees pressed in on both sides, tall enough to block the moonlight. Even with headlights on high beam, the darkness swallowed everything beyond a few feet. When I arrived, I saw a single sedan parked on the shoulder, hazards blinking slowly like a dying heartbeat. The hood was up, but no one was inside. I called out over the radio, "Dispatch, Unit 47 on scene." No driver present. Before they could answer, the radio crackled with static. Then a voice whispered, "He's behind you." Every muscle in my body froze. I turned slowly. Nothing. Nobody. Just the endless black tunnel of forest. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it over the radio hiss. "Dispatch, repeat transmission?" I asked. Silence. Then a familiar voice spoke again, my own voice. "Don't turn around." My fingers went numb. Radios don't echo your own voice back. They don't whisper warnings. They don't sound terrified. I scanned the woods, trying to convince myself it was interference, until I noticed something in the passenger seat of the empty vehicle. The radio inside the sedan was on, tuned to my frequency. And the voice coming from it whispered one more time, clearer, urgent, desperate. "Run!" I forced myself to walk toward the sedan, one step at a time, hand resting on my holster. The air was unnaturally still. No wind, no insects, nothing but the pulsing click of the hazard lights. As I reached the open driver door, the interior dome light flickered weakly, illuminating a strange smear across the dashboard. It looked like someone dragged their hand across it, not with dirt, with blood. I leaned in to inspect it when the patrol radio on my shoulder suddenly switched channels on its own. A deep, unfamiliar voice bled through the static. "You're late." I recoiled. Radios can't change channels without input. My thumb wasn't anywhere near the button. My training told me to call for backup. But before I could speak, my cruiser's headlights flickered and went out, plunging everything into complete darkness. My pulse hammered. I grabbed my flashlight and spun around, scanning the roadside. At that moment, every bird in the trees took off at once, shrieking, wings beating like a storm of feathers. The radio inside the sedan hissed again, this time louder, sharper, as if something was pushing through interference. Then I heard it clearly. Tires skidding. A vehicle, invisible in the dark, speeding toward me at high speed. Except I couldn't see headlights. Just the sound, and it was coming fast. The sound of tires skidding grew louder, the shriek of rubber tearing against asphalt. Yet the road in front of me was still pitch black and empty. I raised my flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. No headlights. No engine. Just the violent grinding of wheels fighting the pavement. a phantom car. The noise roared past me, just inches from where I stood, kicking up leaves and dust, rushing deeper into the darkness, as if an invisible vehicle had blown by at 90 miles per hour. My flashlight shook in my hand. My breathing turned shallow. Then, the radio on my shoulder crackled again, and this time, there was no static. Instead, a woman's voice whispered, trembling with panic. "You saw it too, didn't you? I tried to warn you." The voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere inside the woods, not over radio waves. The flashlight beam trembled as I pointed it toward the trees lining the highway. And that's when I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the tree line. Completely still, completely silent, its head tilted as if examining me. I called out, "Highway patrol, show me your hands." No movement. Then, slowly, unnaturally slowly, its white hand lifted into the beam of my flashlight, holding my badge, the badge I was wearing on my uniform just moments ago. I reached instinctively to my chest. It was gone. My skin prickled with dread. The radio whispered again, this time in a voice identical to mine. "He took your place." My knees nearly buckled. I stared into the trees, flashlight trembling so hard the beam wavered. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, just held my badge between two long fingers like a trophy. I swallowed hard, forcing authority into my voice. "Step toward me." Slowly, nothing. Just silence and the faint hum of my radio. I took one step off the pavement toward the ditch, and the leaves under my boots crunched. That tiny sound reset something in the scene. The figure tilted its head, jerking in a sharp motion like a broken marionette. In that single movement, the forest around me went dead silent. No insects, no wind, no rustling leaves. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the voice from the radio, my own voice, whispered so close it vibrated against my ear. "Don't go to him." I spun around, thinking someone was behind me, but the highway was empty. When I turned back toward the trees, the figure was gone. Then a loud metallic chime echoed through the woods, like a car door slamming shut. I whipped around and stared at the unoccupied sedan on the shoulder. The headlights were now on, the engine was running, and someone was sitting in the driver's seat. Someone wearing my uniform. I froze where I stood, unable to breathe. The silhouette sitting behind the wheel was motionless, facing forward. I slowly walked back toward the sedan. My pulse hammered in my ears. From a few feet away, I could make out details. The reflection on the windshield, the angle of the head. The figure wasn't just wearing my uniform. It was me. Same face, same haircut, same patrol jacket. My double stared straight ahead, eyes wide and lifeless like a mannequin. The hazard blinkers reflected red across his blank expression, making him look bloodless. The passenger window rolled down on its own with a slow mechanical whine. My radio crackled, and the voice, my own voice again, whispered, "Get in." My throat tightened. The figure in the driver's seat turned its head toward me in a stiff, jerky motion, then smiled. But the smile wasn't human. The lips stretched too far, almost tearing at the corners like a mask someone was forcing into an expression it didn't understand. I backed away, drawing my gun. "Last warning, step out of the vehicle." The double blinked once. Slow, deliberate. Then every door lock on the sedan snapped down at once. Not to keep someone inside. To keep me outside. My cruiser radio screamed, "He wants you alone." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the dirt shoulder as I retreated toward my cruiser. Sweat rolled down my neck. I slammed my hand onto my radio. "Dispatch, I need immediate..." Static swallowed my voice. Then another voice, deep, emotionless, replied, "Unit already on scene." A pair of headlights appeared from behind the tree line. Another patrol cruiser rolled onto the highway, silent. No engine sound, no gravel crunching, just appearing. It stopped right beside me. Lights off, windows tinted pitch black. I stepped toward it, weapon raised. "Identify yourself?" Nothing. I circled to the driver's side window and shined my flashlight. The beam reflected straight back. The darkness in that car wasn't normal. It swallowed the light. Then a hand pressed against the inside of the glass. A human hand, pale, thin, motionless, and carved into the palm, written backwards so I could read it through the glass, were two words: "Let him in." Before I could move, the sedan behind me revved its engine, tires screeching. Except it wasn't driving on the road. It was facing me. The sedan peeled forward, accelerating straight toward me. I dove into the ditch as it roared past, my flashlight flying from my hand. I felt the heat of the engine as it barely missed me. Impossibly fast, impossibly silent. The car should have crashed into the woods, but it didn't. It vanished. No impact, no engine, no lights. Just silence. I scrambled up the slope, panting. My flashlight was gone, swallowed by the ditch. I scanned the highway. Both cars were gone. The sedan, the silent patrol unit. Only my cruiser remained, headlights dimming, battery draining like something was feeding on it. I tried the door, locked. My radio crackled again. But this time, it wasn't a voice. It was breathing. Slow, wet, uneven breathing, like something struggling to imitate lungs. I backed away toward the center of the road. Then a voice, tired, broken, human, whispered from the radio. "Please, don't let him drive me again." I dropped the radio like it burned me. The moment it hit the pavement, it switched channels again, by itself, and began playing an audio recording. Not static, not voices. A dashboard cam recording. Squealing tires, screams, metal crunching. A violent crash. Then a voice I recognized from earlier. The woman's voice, crying, "Help! He won't let me out." The sound of glass shattering filled the night. The recording ended abruptly. I stood frozen in the center of the empty road, heart pounding. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. That crash wasn't a memory. It was a loop. The radio was replaying the final moments of whoever died here. I knelt down slowly, picking the radio up with shaking hands. "Who are you?" I whispered. Static then. "Passenger." Followed by, "You're the next driver." A sudden gust of freezing wind blasted down the highway, and I instinctively turned toward my cruiser. The rear door was open, wide open. The interior light glowed faintly like a mouth. I should have run. I should have left everything and disappeared into the trees. Instead, I moved toward the cruiser, gun drawn, terrified of what I already knew I would find inside. There on the back seat sat a dashboard camera, playing, and on the screen, clear as day, I was driving, except the timestamp was 2 minutes from now. In the recording, I gripped the wheel, sweating, crying, screaming into the radio as something sat in the passenger seat, something wrong, something smiling. I stared at the recording, at my future self, paralyzed. Then the me on the screen turned and stared into the camera and whispered, "Don't get in the car." The screen went black. I stepped away from the cruiser, slow, careful. "I'm not getting in," I whispered into the darkness. For the first time since arriving, nothing answered. No radio, no voice, no footsteps, just Silence. I walked backward up the highway, gun in both hands, never taking my eyes off the cruiser. After about 30 yards, I blinked only once. And suddenly the car wasn't there anymore. No cruiser, no sedan. Just empty road, like none of it ever existed. At the station, I tried to file a report. But the dispatcher looked at me like I was insane. "We never sent you to Old Ridge Highway," she said. "That road's been closed since 1997. A fatal crash shut it down." I asked her, voice cracking, who was in the crash. She searched the old archive database. Patrol officer, deceased name, Marcus. I stared at my own death certificate. My radio crackled one last time. Same chilling voice as before. Shift change. It was nearly midnight when I rolled into the lonely gas station off Route 66. The rain had stopped, leaving the asphalt slick and reflecting the neon signs like shards of broken glass. The station looked abandoned at first glance, the pumps rusted, flickering lights overhead, the windows dirty and fogged. Yet, a single figure moved behind the counter, shadowed and still, occasionally flicking a dim switch that hummed but changed nothing. I parked my cruiser and stepped out, the puddles swallowing my footsteps with an eerie silence. As soon as I approached, my radio crackled violently, static cutting into the night air. Then a voice whispered my name. "Don't trust him." I froze. The figure behind the counter looked like any ordinary man in a dark jacket, but something was off. No reflection in the grimy window, no pulse in the veins I expected to see in his hands. I tried to ask a question, but the air seemed to thicken, my words swallowed by a low hum that rose from the station itself. The door slammed shut behind me, though I hadn't touched it. Lights flickered violently, and I realized the pumps outside weren't moving. They were glowing, not dispensing fuel, but somehow drawing me in. The radio crackled again, this time with distorted laughter, layered with hundreds of voices screaming simultaneously. The station had become a trap, a pocket of reality twisted into some predatory dimension. My gun felt heavy, my chest tight. And then I saw movement in the shadows. More figures emerging from the walls and behind the shelves. Pale, faceless, grinning, and watching me like predators watching prey. The voice from the radio whispered again, chillingly clear. "You came here alone. Now you belong to us." I tried to step closer to the counter, but the floorboards groaned under my weight as if the station itself was alive, judging each move. The figure behind the counter didn't speak, didn't blink, just tilted its head slightly, the shadow over its face stretching unnaturally. I glanced at the shelves stacked with old snacks and dusty sodas, only to see figures moving behind them, crawling along the floor, slipping between gaps in the wood like black liquid. I aimed my flashlight at one, pale, faceless, its fingers elongated and bending in impossible angles. It recoiled, but another took its place, silently advancing. The radio on my shoulder burst into static, then my own voice screamed, "Leave now!" I spun around, but the gas station had changed. The walls had lengthened, the ceiling lowered, and the door through which I had entered was now a black void that seemed to swallow light. I felt the first icy fingers brush my neck, not from one figure but dozens, from every shadow, every corner pressing into me. Then a distorted voice hissed from the radio, "Pay the price or stay forever." My knees buckled. The entire gas station seemed to pulse like a beating heart, hungry and alive. Every pump, every shelf, every shadow was watching. And I realized the true trap. This place doesn't just trap bodies. It traps souls, and it was already claiming mine. I stumbled into the aisle nearest the counter, hoping to find a back exit, but the layout had changed. The aisle stretched farther than physically possible, shelves bending and curving into darkness. The air was thick, wet, and smelled of decay and rust. From the shadows, dozens of figures emerged, faceless, pale, some on hands and knees, some upright, all moving silently but with purpose. I ran, trying to keep my flashlight steady. But the aisle twisted under my feet, lengths stretching impossibly, turning every corner into another trap. The whispers returned, but now they were screams layered over my own thoughts. You're ours, always ours. My reflection appeared on a cracked mirror propped against a shelf. Only it wasn't me. It was pale, eyes black voids, mouth stretched in a grin that no human face could hold. I swung at it with my flashlight, but the mirror shattered, and the shards flew at me like projectiles. I ducked behind a display of cans, but when I peeked out, the aisle had multiplied into 3 identical versions, each filled with crawling shadows. My radio screeched, and a distorted female voice whispered, "Choose a path, or be consumed." Every direction looked like death. Every choice felt wrong. I realized then that the gas station wasn't just a trap. It was a maze designed to break your mind. I returned to the counter, driven by a mix of desperation and foolish courage. The figure was closer now, almost alive in its movement, not walking, but gliding toward me, as if the floor itself carried it. Its face remained featureless, but I swore I could see faint outlines of my own face pressed onto its skin, twisting in terror. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the exits were gone. The radio blared in static and whispered my name with agonizing familiarity. I drew my gun and fired. The bullet passed through the figure as if it were smoke and hit the wall behind it, leaving no mark. Then it tilted its head, and the whispers changed tone, mocking, almost satisfied. Your fear feeds us. The lights flickered violently, and I realized I wasn't alone. Every shadow in the room was moving in harmony now, advancing silently. I stepped back, tripped over the base of the counter, and fell against a metal shelf. The crash sent cans rolling, but instead of hitting the floor, they floated in the air, suspended by an unseen force. The counterman's shadow stretched across the room, reaching for me. I screamed, the sound swallowed by the thick, pulsing darkness. This was no longer a place. It was a predator, and I was the prey. I broke from the counter and stumbled toward the pumps outside. Relief washed over me until I saw them. They weren't pumps anymore. The metal had bent and twisted, hoses curling like serpents, nozzles dripping black liquid. The lights on them glowed unnaturally bright, pulsating like eyes watching me. I approached, trying to ignore the screams in my radio, but one nozzle lunged at me, striking my chest like a striking snake. I flew backward, sliding across the wet asphalt. The fog rolled in thicker, and I realized the gas station itself was moving now. The pumps bending, the building walls leaning forward, closing in, hungry. From the shadows, dozens of faceless figures emerged, advancing silently, their hands outstretched, their mouths open in eternal screams. The radio crackled violently, a chorus of voices screaming, "Pay the toll, or stay forever." My mind reeled. Every instinct told me to run, but every path led deeper into the station's influence. The pump nearest me quivered, the black liquid dripping toward my boots. I understood. The station would not let me leave. I turned toward my cruiser parked by the side, thinking maybe I could escape. But it wasn't there. In its place, the asphalt curved downward, into a black void. I heard the tires squeal beneath me, but not my cruiser. Something else was coming. Then I saw headlights emerge from the fog, coming from multiple directions at once, converging on me. My gun felt useless. The radio erupted again with voices, all distorted, all mocking. I ran toward a shadowed path along the edge of the lot, and the ground under me pulsed like skin. Every step echoed the whispers. Closer, closer, closer. The faceless figures moved in perfect coordination, surrounding me, blocking every exit. The pumps twisted toward me, hoses stretching, nozzles snapping like jaws. I realized the truth. This was not a gas station. This was a living trap, a creature built from metal, asphalt, shadow, and souls of those foolish enough to enter. I had to survive. But how? Every breath I took was stolen by the thick, hungry air, the shadows crawling closer, stretching toward me like hands of death. I tripped, falling onto wet asphalt, sliding toward a twisted pump. A hand, pale, faceless, shot out and grabbed my ankle. I tried to kick free, but more hands followed, pulling me toward the station. The radio hissed violently and then whispered, "Pay the toll, or be consumed." I realized the toll wasn't money. It was fear. My own terror was the currency. The closer I struggled, the stronger the pull. A figure emerged from the fog. The shadowed man behind the counter. Taller now, limbs bending unnaturally, face still featureless. He reached toward me with a hand that extended like rope, tendrils curling around my torso. I screamed, fire in my chest from adrenaline, and kicked wildly. The tendrils recoiled. The fog swirled violently, and the building itself seemed to pulse, living, hungry, aware. I understood. If I didn't conquer my fear, the station would keep me. But if I fought, maybe, just maybe, I could escape. I forced myself up, shaking, wet, trembling. I focused on a single point, the darkness beyond the pumps. I ran, ignoring the hands, ignoring the whispers. The shadowed figures lunged at me, but I didn't slow. I reached the edge of the lot and leaped into fog, into nothingness, and felt my body pulled by gravity, then released, then pulled again. Behind me, I heard the building creak, metal groan, whispers screaming in rage. I didn't look back. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fog lifted. I was on the highway, the gas station nowhere in sight. Rain-slick asphalt reflected the moonlight. My cruiser sat parked safely, as if nothing had happened. But my radio sat on the seat, crackling, faint, whispering, chillingly familiar. "Next time, don't come alone." I tried to tell dispatch what happened, but they laughed, thinking I was hallucinating from a long night on patrol. They told me the gas station had been abandoned for decades, closed after a series of disappearances. I asked about the victims, about missing officers, about reports, all denied. My mind raced. The radio still whispered sometimes, faintly, repeating fragments of voices I'd heard inside the station. I couldn't sleep. Every passing highway, every empty gas station, every flickering neon sign made my skin crawl. The experience haunted me, a permanent scar etched into my memory. I realized then that I had escaped, physically. But the gas station had left a part of itself in me, a whisper in my ear, a shadow in my mind. And I knew, one day, it would call me back. Weeks later, I drove the same stretch of highway, still haunted, still cautious. Mist hung over the asphalt, cold and heavy. Neon lights flickered in the distance. The radio crackled once, soft, then a whisper. "We're waiting." I slammed the channel off, heart hammering. Ahead, A gas station emerged from the fog. Rusty, abandoned, flickering neon. The air seemed to vibrate, thick with malevolence. My hands gripped the wheel tight. I knew the next shift, the next patrol, the next lonely night on the highway. It would come for me again. The highway gas station trap was patient, eternal, and it never forgets. And deep down, I knew one day I would step inside again. It was a foggy, moonless night when Officer Daniels was patrolling a remote stretch of highway. The rain had turned the asphalt slick and reflective, making the dim glow of his headlights dance across the wet surface. That's when he saw her. A lone figure standing perfectly still on the shoulder, her thumb raised as if pleading for a ride. She was young, wearing a long white coat that seemed soaked through, her hair plastered to her face by the mist. Something about her felt wrong. But the officer, trained to help, slowed his cruiser and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" he asked. She climbed in silently, her eyes staring straight ahead. The heater barely warmed the car. The air was thick with tension. Daniels tried to speak, but the girl gave no response, just a faint, almost imperceptible shiver. As they drove, she didn't shift, didn't breathe audibly, and yet he could feel her presence pressing behind him. Minutes passed. The road curved, fog growing denser, until he glanced in the rearview mirror, and the seat was empty. He slammed the brakes, heart pounding, and spun the car around. There was nothing. No footprints, no sign she'd ever been there. Only the wet asphalt and the faint echo of her silence. Daniels later discovered that this stretch of highway had a dark reputation. Drivers spoke of a young woman who appears to those who drive alone, vanishing before anyone can reach them. Some locals claimed she was the ghost of a girl who had died decades ago in a car accident exactly on that same curve, forever hitchhiking along the misty roads. Even now, officers warn, if you see a lone figure on that highway at night, don't stop. Some encounters aren't meant to end. They're meant to haunt. Officer Reynolds had been patrolling a long, lonely interstate that cut through the thick forests of the Pacific Northwest. The highway was notorious for strange occurrences, but even he wasn't prepared for what happened that night. Around midnight, he noticed movement in the edge of his headlights, a group of shadowy figures standing by the roadside. At first glance, they looked like hikers or lost travelers. But something was off. They didn't wave or call out. They didn't even breathe. And when he tried to drive closer, they seemed to glide across the asphalt, moving unnaturally fast. Curiosity mixed with unease. Reynolds followed them. Each time he turned, the figures led him deeper into the dark forest bordering the highway. His GPS insisted he was still on the straight interstate, yet the trees pressed closer, the fog thickened, and the road seemed to vanish beneath his tires. The radio crackled with static, as if the forest itself were alive, whispering through the static. An icy chill crawled over his arms, the hairs on his neck standing on end. When he stopped the car to catch his breath, the figures vanished. Vanished as if they had never existed. No footprints, no shadows, no evidence. Just the dark road stretching endlessly ahead. Weeks later, other officers reported similar sightings. Humanoid shapes that appear and disappear in seconds, figures that seem tethered to the highway's history of tragic accidents. Some say they are the souls of the lost, doomed to haunt the roads where life slipped away. Others claim they are something else entirely. Something not human. Something that waits for the curious. Reynolds never spoke of it publicly, but he never patrolled that stretch of highway alone again. And whenever he drives those dark roads at night, he swears he sometimes sees shadows just out of reach, silently watching. It was nearly 2 a.m. when Officer Martinez was patrolling a remote stretch of highway notorious for its eerie silence. The rain had stopped, but the fog hung thick over the asphalt, making every streetlight appear like a faint halo in the darkness. His radio crackled softly with the usual dispatch chatter, until suddenly it emitted a strange, chilling voice. "Help me! Help me!" Martinez froze. The voice was faint, distorted, but undeniably real. He glanced at the dashboard. No active calls, no one nearby. Shaking off the unease, he tried to ignore it. But the voice repeated, louder this time, coming from the radio itself, echoing with a clarity that made his blood run cold. He pulled over, scanning the foggy roadside. Nothing. Just the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a coyote. The voice whispered again, closer this time, seemingly coming from outside the car. Martinez's heart pounded as he reached for his flashlight, swinging it across the empty road. But the beam revealed nothing but the mist. Days later, Martinez learned that other officers had experienced the same haunting call on this very highway. Some believe it's the echo of a fatal crash decades ago, a soul forever trapped, trying to warn travelers. Others think it's something far darker, a presence that manipulates electronics and preys on the lone and isolated. Martinez never drove this stretch alone again. Every time he passes it now, he instinctively grips the wheel tighter, listening for that voice. Because sometimes it's still there, whispering through the night, impossible to ignore. Officer Thompson was driving down a winding mountain highway, the kind where headlights barely touch the edge of the asphalt. The night was unusually quiet. No wind, no distant traffic, just the rhythmic hum of his tires on the wet road. That's when he saw a man standing by the roadside, motionless, wearing a dark hooded jacket, his face obscured by shadows. Thompson slowed down and rolled the window down, calling out, "Do you need help?" The man didn't move, didn't respond. His presence was unnerving, too still, too intentional. Thompson considered driving past, but something compelled him to stop. As he reached for his door handle, the stranger stepped forward, but not like a normal human. His movement was jerky, unnatural, almost robotic. Thompson froze, sensing danger, but before he could react, the man vanished. Poof! Just like a shadow dissolving into the fog. Shaken, Thompson continued cautiously, but the same figure appeared repeatedly at intervals along the next 10 miles, always vanishing whenever he tried to get closer. At one point, it even appeared in the side mirror, staring with empty eyes before disappearing again. Other officers who patrol that highway swear the same phenomenon occurs. A mysterious roadside figure, seemingly impossible to catch, appearing at will. Some theorize it's a ghost tied to a tragic accident. Others fear it's something inhuman, an entity that stalks lonely highways, feeding off fear and curiosity alike. Thompson never stopped for anyone on that stretch again. And even years later, he admits he sometimes sees fleeting shadows at night, making his pulse spike as if the stranger is still waiting. Officer Riley was finishing a long shift when he stopped at a desolate truck stop on the outskirts of an abandoned town. The place was eerily quiet, the neon lights flickering, casting strange shadows across empty fuel pumps. As he walked past the parked trucks, he heard it, a piercing scream coming from the far end of the lot. He froze. The sound was human, desperate, echoing in the night. Riley drew his flashlight and slowly approached, his pulse racing. There was no one there, just an empty parking lot drenched in dim, flickering light. But the screams continued, now closer, coming from the direction of a darkened alley behind the convenience store. Summoning courage, Riley peeked around the corner. Nothing. just silence. But then he saw it. Figures, shadowy and indistinct, moving between the trucks, vanishing when he turned the light directly on them. The air grew icy, and the oppressive feeling of being watched made his skin crawl. Weeks later, officers reported similar events at the same truck stop. Mysterious screams at night, figures darting between trucks, and a cold, lingering sense of terror. Some believe it's the echoes of a massacre that happened decades ago. Others say it's something alive, hunting the lonely and the curious. Riley left that truck stop never to return, haunted by the memory of screams that might never have belonged to the living. It was a cold winter night when Officer Hargrove noticed a convoy of semi-trucks moving unusually slowly on an empty interstate. As he approached, he realized something was off. The trucks had no lights, yet they were perfectly aligned, following the curves of the road, as if guided by a single mind. Curiosity turned to fear when Hargrove saw the drivers, or what should have been the drivers. Shadowy silhouettes sat in the cabs, motionless, their faces impossible to see. He radioed dispatch, but static drowned out his words. The trucks didn't acknowledge his presence. He decided to overtake the convoy, but as he did, he noticed the road behind him twisting impossibly, looping back toward the trucks, no matter how far he drove. The headlights of the patrol car reflected the dark, featureless faces of the shadowy drivers in the mirrors. Every attempt to escape seemed futile. The convoy was everywhere at once. This stretch of highway earned a notorious reputation. Drivers have reported trucks appearing suddenly in the middle of the road, phantom drivers that vanish, and an unshakable sense of being watched. Some suggest these are spirits of long-dead truckers, trapped forever on the route they once loved. Hargrove made it out alive, but refused to speak about the experience in detail. He warns every officer who patrols the area. Some roads don't forgive curiosity. Officer Kim was responding to a routine call when he approached a foggy overpass spanning a river valley. Thick mist rolled in from the valley below, obscuring the bridge's edges. He noticed a figure standing at the midpoint, staring blankly into the fog. As he slowed the car, the figure raised a hand. Officer Kim felt an inexplicable fear pressing down on him. The moment he tried to engage, the figure dissipated, almost like it was never there. Then the car radio sparked to life with frantic, ghostly voices, repeating unintelligible warnings. The overpass had a history of accidents, many unexplained, and officers reported hearing cries at night, seeing shadows leap from the railing, or witnessing vehicles swerve suddenly, as if avoiding invisible obstacles. Kim experienced all of it firsthand, an encounter that left him questioning what was real and what was supernatural. By the time he left, the mist had cleared, but the sense of dread lingered. He knew he had glimpsed a bridge between the living and the dead, a corridor haunted by spirits unwilling to cross over. Every patrol on that overpass carried a silent understanding. Some roads are haunted not by memory, but by the living fear that resides in the fog itself. Officer Blake patrolled a stretch of highway notorious for escaped convicts and late-night criminal activity. One night, he saw a man running along the roadside, frantically waving for help. Blake stopped and called out, but the man ran directly toward the woods and disappeared in seconds, leaving no trace. No footprints, no sound. Months later, prison records revealed that a dangerous escapee had vanished in that exact area decades prior. Officers reported seeing fleeting shadows along the roadside, sometimes crossing directly in front of cars, only to vanish when approached. Some even claimed the figure mimicked real-time movements, almost taunting them. The stretch became known among patrols as a living ghost zone. Blake never again attempted to follow the figure, fearing that some spirits or entities don't want to be chased. It was a bitterly cold night when I pulled into the old 24-hour truck stop on the outskirts of Montana. The place looked deserted, neon lights buzzing faintly, casting a sickly green glow over cracked asphalt. The diesel pumps hissed in the wind, though no truck was near them. I stepped out of my cruiser, boots crunching gravel, and immediately felt a heaviness in the air, like walking underwater. A figure lurked near the diner entrance, leaning against the wall, motionless, faceless, and impossibly tall. Its shadow stretched unnaturally across the ground, bending toward me with every flicker of the light. I tried to radio dispatch, but my signal cut out, replaced by a low, distorted hum, a voice that sounded eerily like my own, whispering, "Don't stop. Don't look back." I forced myself to take another step. As I approached, the air grew thick, oppressive. My flashlight flickered, revealing other shapes moving in the dark. Crawling behind dumpsters, slithering along the ground, faceless but somehow humanoid. The diner door creaked, opening by itself, and I heard the faint clatter of chairs on the floor inside, though no one was visible. Every instinct screamed to run, but something drew me in, a force I couldn't resist. The radio hissed again, "Stay, or join them." My heart pounded as I realized that this truck stop was no ordinary haunt. It was a living trap, feeding on fear, a place where shadows walked and waited patiently for the next soul to wander too close. I cautiously stepped into the diner, the door creaking loudly behind me. The interior looked normal at first. A few overturned chairs, a flickering neon clock on the wall, a faint smell of old grease and dust. But then I noticed the eyes. Hundreds of them. Embedded into the walls, the ceiling tiles, even the condiments on the counter. They didn't blink, but they followed me. My flashlight caught glimpses of shadows moving in impossible ways, slinking along corners, stretching across the floor. The radio on my shoulder hissed violently and then whispered, "You can't leave. Not yet." I tried to reach for my gun, but my hands felt heavy, numb, as if the diner itself was pulling my nerves taut. From behind the counter, the tall, faceless figure emerged, gliding across the floor without touching it. Every step it took caused the lights to flicker, and a low hum filled the room, vibrating through my bones. I realized the diner wasn't just haunted, it was alive. Every object, every shadow, every reflected eye was part of it, watching, feeding, and waiting for the right moment to strike. My heart raced as I understood. The truck stop wasn't just dangerous, it was sentient, and I was the prey. Near the back of the diner, a narrow door led downward. A cold draft poured out, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. Something urged me toward it, a low vibration in the floor that matched the pounding of my heart. I descended the steps slowly, each one groaning under my weight. The basement was enormous, bigger than it should have been, with rows of empty storage racks casting long, skeletal shadows. Faces pressed against the walls, featureless but unmistakably human, their mouths opening in silent screams. I could feel their attention on me, their cold presence pressing in from all sides. The radio emitted a high-pitched whine before the same distorted voice whispered, "Stay, or join us forever." I moved deeper, noticing the shadows shifting into humanoid shapes, crawling along the floor and ceiling like living ink. I swung my flashlight wildly, but it passed through them like smoke. The basement seemed endless, a labyrinth of darkness designed to trap the living. And in the center, the faceless figure awaited, standing motionless, but somehow aware of every move I made. I realized with dread that the longer I stayed, the more my sanity would erode, feeding the entity below into an even hungrier form. I finally escaped the basement stairs, only to find a long hallway where none had existed. The walls pulsed as if breathing, painted a deep, shadowy black that seemed to stretch endlessly. From the corners, more faceless figures emerged, crawling and gliding, their movements synchronized like a predatory dance. The floorboards shifted under my feet, bending and buckling, sending me stumbling forward. The radio hissed and shrieked with distorted laughter, warning me in a voice I knew intimately. The closer you get, the deeper you fall. My flashlight revealed reflections of myself on the walls, distorted, twisted, pale-faced versions of me screaming silently. I ran, trying doors along the hallway, but each led to the same corridor, twisted and alive. The shadows seemed to reach for me from every direction, their hands stretching impossibly long. Every step I took increased their hunger, their whispers drilling into my skull. The truck stop was no longer a building. It was a living labyrinth of terror, intent on trapping me and consuming my very essence. After what felt like hours, I glimpsed light at the far end of the hallway. The exit. Neon flickered, cutting through the oppressive darkness, but it felt almost alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. I ran toward it, the shadows clawing at my heels, whispering threats in every voice I had ever heard. One shadow lunged from the ceiling, slamming into me, and I stumbled, hitting the wall. I scrambled up and pushed forward, tearing through the black fog that now seemed to fill the corridor. The radio screeched one last warning. "You can't leave. Not yet." I reached the neon exit and threw myself through the doorway. Instantly, the world snapped back into reality. The parking lot was normal, rain-slick asphalt reflecting the neon sign of the diner. The tall, faceless figure was gone. The whispers stopped. I was safe. For now. But deep in my mind, I could still hear it. The low, patient hum of the truck stop, alive and waiting for the next traveler, foolish enough to enter. I finally escaped the basement stairs, only to find a long hallway where none had existed. The walls pulsed as if breathing, painted a deep, shadowy black that seemed to stretch endlessly. From the corners, more faceless figures emerged, crawling and gliding, their movements synchronized like a predatory dance. The floorboards shifted under my feet, bending and buckling, sending me stumbling forward. The radio hissed and shrieked with distorted laughter, warning me in a voice I knew intimately. The closer you get, the deeper you fall. My flashlight revealed reflections of myself on the walls, distorted, twisted, pale-faced versions of me screaming silently. I ran, trying doors along the hallway, but each led to the same corridor, twisted and alive. The shadows seemed to reach for me from every direction, their hands stretching impossibly long. Every step I took increased their hunger, their whispers drilling into my skull. The truck stop was no longer a building. It was a living labyrinth of terror, intent on trapping me and consuming my very essence. Suddenly, shapes surged from the surrounding fog. Faceless figures, faster than anything human, moving on all fours and upright at the same time. They were the shadows of those trapped before me, now hunting with purpose. I swung my flashlight wildly, but it passed through them like smoke. The radio hissed, then a whisper, "Run, or be devoured." The asphalt beneath me began to ripple, forming jagged peaks and valleys, as if the ground itself were alive. I realized my cruiser was gone, swallowed by the fog. The shadows advanced relentlessly, fingers stretching, mouths opening impossibly wide, their silent screams drilling into my mind. Heart hammering, lungs burning, I sprinted blindly, hoping for any escape. Every step forward felt like wading through a living nightmare, the shadows merging into a single, massive form behind me. A wave of darkness, patient and eternal. I spotted a single fuel pump illuminated under a flickering neon sign. Desperation seized me. Maybe I could climb atop it, get some perspective, maybe even signal for help. As I ran, the shadows lunged again, hands clawing at my coat, legs, and arms. I barely made it to the pump, scrambling atop it, shaking, panting. From the ground below, the tall, faceless figure rose like a pillar, limbs stretching impossibly high, eyes, or rather, the absence of eyes, fixated on me. The radio exploded into static, then a single word pierced the chaos. Forever. I realized then the final truth. The truck stop wasn't just a trap. It was a living entity feeding on terror. Every motion I had made, every scream, every heartbeat had fueled it. And now, in this final moment, I could either succumb or fight with every ounce of my remaining sanity. I took a deep, shaky breath, heart pounding, mind screaming. The shadows surged forward, the tall figure descending toward me. Then, on instinct, I leapt from the pump into the fog. For a heartbeat, I was weightless, suspended between nightmare and reality. Behind me, the tall figure lunged, its limbs stretching like black tendrils, trying to pull me back. I hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. The fog swirled violently around me, but when I looked up, the asphalt beneath my feet appeared normal again. The diner and pumps were gone, leaving only the quiet hum of the highway. My cruiser sat parked exactly where I had left it. I grabbed the keys, trembling, my chest heaving, and drove away. The radio silent at last. But even as I sped down the highway, I felt the pull. The truck stopped watching, waiting, patient and eternal. Weeks later, I drove the same stretch again, cautious, alert, haunted by memories I could barely process. The fog hung low over the highway, thick and cold. Neon lights flickered faintly in the distance, a familiar, sickly green glow. I avoided any stops, my eyes scanning the roadside. But the radio crackled softly, whispering in that same distorted voice. "We're waiting." I gritted my teeth, gripping the wheel, and looked ahead. A shadow flickered near an abandoned diner, too tall, too still, too perfect. My pulse raced. I realized then that the truck stop shadow never really left. It waits patiently, silently, for the next traveler alone on a lonely highway, ready to draw them into its nightmare. I had survived physically, but the memory, the fear, and the knowledge of its existence would haunt me forever. And deep down, I knew. One day, it would call me back. I had been driving for hours along the desolate stretch of highway, rain hammering against the windshield, fog rolling in thick as wool. The GPS had lost signal miles ago, leaving me alone with only the sound of tires slicing through wet asphalt. Then, through the gray haze, I saw it. An abandoned rest stop, half-collapsed roof, flickering neon sign that read, "Welcome." Relief and dread collided in my chest. I parked, stepping out into the chill, my boots squelching on waterlogged gravel. The air was heavy, damp, and carried a faint metallic tang that made my stomach churn. As I approached the entrance, the sign flickered violently, casting shadows that seemed to twist independently from the building. A low hum reverberated beneath my feet, not the hum of electricity, but something alive, deep, and pulsing. I pushed open the door, and the darkness inside greeted me like a living thing. Stale air mixed with the smell of mold and something fouled, rotting. My flashlight revealed overturned chairs, a long counter caked in dust, and at the far end, a figure. Faceless, impossibly tall, it leaned against the wall, silent, watching. Then I noticed the subtle movements. Shadows slipping along the walls, pooling at my feet, stretching toward me, independent of light or logic. The radio, left on the passenger seat, crackled violently, and a voice, distorted, familiar, whispering my name, hissed, "You shouldn't be here. Not now. Not ever." I realized then that this rest stop wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. Waiting for someone like me, alone, tired, vulnerable, to step inside and become part of its endless, hungry darkness. Every instinct screamed to leave, but the door I had come through slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the walls. The air thickened, and a whisper, soft yet terrifyingly omnipresent, wrapped around my mind. "You belong here. Forever." My pulse raced, my flashlight trembling in my hand. I had entered a trap, alive and sentient, and I could feel it sizing me up, already beginning to consume my sanity. I stepped further inside, and the door slammed behind me, reverberating through the cavernous interior. The rest stop was far larger than it appeared from outside. A labyrinth of hallways that twisted unnaturally, each turn seeming longer than the last. Water dripped from the ceiling in uneven patterns, echoing like ghostly footsteps in the stillness. Shadows clung to the corners, stretching and twitching as if alive, independent of the light. I shone my flashlight across the room, revealing walls lined with shelves of discarded items, cracked coffee mugs, rusted cans, yellowed maps, each casting a shadow that seemed to lean toward me. The faceless figure had vanished from sight, but I could feel its presence, a cold pressure pressing into my back. My radio sputtered with static, then a voice, unmistakably my own, whispered, "Turn back, turn back." I realized then that the hallways themselves were shifting, feeding on my fear, guiding me deeper into the rest stop's heart. Every step brought a new, creeping dread. The building pulsed faintly beneath my feet, as if alive, as if it knew exactly how to terrify me. The shadows flickered, multiplied, and began moving faster, coalescing into shapes that lunged just beyond my line of sight. I pushed open a door marked "Staff Only," and an immediate chill hit me. The room was small, lit only by a faint flicker from a broken overhead lamp. The walls were covered in graffiti, strange symbols, and scratches, some resembling letters, some indecipherable. But it wasn't the graffiti that unsettled me. It was the whispers. Hundreds of them, layered, overlapping, surrounding me from every direction, some coming from inside the walls themselves. The faceless figure appeared at the corner of the room, leaning against the wall, impossibly tall, limbs bending unnaturally. The whispers merged with my heartbeat, my own thoughts distorting into echoes I didn't recognize. My flashlight beam shook as I tried to steady myself. I saw shapes moving just out of reach, dark forms crawling across the floor and ceiling. My radio emitted a high-pitched screech, and through the static came one word repeated endlessly. "Stay." Panic surged, but I couldn't leave. Every exit I tried led to another hallway, another shadow, another layer of fear. I realized then that this room, like the rest of the rest stop, wasn't physical. It was alive, a manifestation of every traveler's terror, feeding, expanding, waiting to consume the next lost soul. Beyond the staff room, I stumbled into what had once been a public restroom. The floor was flooded, water pooling ankle deep, reflecting shadows that didn't belong to me. The air was thick, humid, carrying a metallic scent that made my stomach churn. Shapes emerged from the water, humanoid but wrong. Elongated limbs, faceless heads, crawling slowly toward me. My flashlight barely cut through the oppressive darkness. The faceless figure loomed at the far end, silently observing, unmoving yet omnipresent. The radio hissed and then whispered in a distorted, menacing tone, "The deeper you go, the less you return." Every step I took caused ripples in the water that distorted my reflection, showing me twisted versions of myself, screaming silently. The walls seemed to pulse, shifting in and out like the heartbeat of the building itself. I understood then that this rest stop wasn't just haunted. It was a predator, a living trap for the unwary, and I was walking straight into its maw. I pressed forward, drawn by a faint light at the end of a narrow corridor, which led to the old kitchen. The smell hit me first. Rot, decay, something foul that made me gag. Rusted pots and pans hung from hooks, long corroded, swinging slightly despite no breeze. Shadows moved across the walls and counters, twisting like living smoke. The faceless figure was there, standing in the middle of the room, arms outstretched, silent yet commanding the space around it. Shapes emerged from the corners. Humanoid, liquid darkness crawling across the floor, pooling beneath cabinets, reaching for me. My flashlight flickered, then went out completely. Panic surged. The radio spat static, then a voice, faint but unmistakable. "You will stay. Forever." I stumbled backward, barely keeping my balance, heart racing, realizing with dread that the rest stop wasn't just a building. It was a sentient nightmare, growing stronger with each intruder, feeding on fear, prepared to trap me in its endless halls forever. I stumbled through a narrow doorway at the back of the kitchen and found myself in a hall lined with mirrors, dozens of them, tall and cracked, reflecting endless versions of myself. At first, I thought it was just the glass, but then I noticed my reflections moving independently, smiling when I didn't, screaming when I was silent. The faceless figure glided along the hall, and in each reflection, it appeared closer, larger, stretching impossibly toward me. Shadows slithered across the floor, reaching out to touch me, curling around my ankles like living ink. The radio emitted distorted laughter, then a whisper, "They will join us." Every mirror reflected a different nightmare, each one designed to break my mind. I realized that the rest stop's power wasn't limited to the physical. It could warp reality, create illusions, and trap your mind as easily as your body. I had to keep moving, but the hallway seemed endless, twisting back on itself, stretching and narrowing with every frantic step. I moved quickly through the hall, but the ceiling seemed alive. Shadows peeled away from it, crawling downward with horrifying grace, faceless, humanoid, dripping darkness. Each one reached for me, their limbs impossibly long, stretching like liquid night. My flashlight flickered, revealing more figures clinging to the walls, their black forms merging with the shadows above. The faceless figure loomed at the end of the hall, arms raised, commanding the crawling masses with silent authority. My radio emitted a series of high-pitched screams before whispering my name repeatedly. "You belong here." Fear gripped me as I realized the building wasn't just a predator. It was an ecosystem of terror. Each shadow, each figure, each whisper feeding into a larger, intelligent presence. Every instinct screamed to escape, yet every door I tried led me deeper into the nightmare. I could feel my mind fraying, each heartbeat echoing in the oppressive, living architecture around me. I found a staircase leading upward, but the steps seemed to stretch infinitely. Every step I climbed twisted beneath my feet, stretching the building like taffy. Shadows lunged from the banisters, wrapping around my legs, slowing my ascent. The radio shrieked violently, then hissed, "You will never leave." My flashlight beam trembled as the faceless figure descended behind me, limbs bending unnaturally, each movement silent, but impossibly fast. The walls pulsed and breathed, narrowing the staircase, creating the sense that I was trapped inside a living tunnel. Each step I took seemed to age me, draining energy and hope, while the whispers of past victims pressed into my mind, urging me to surrender. I realized that every escape attempt only drew me deeper into the building's living nightmare, feeding the creature that thrived on terror. I finally reached a large atrium, but the space was alive with movement. Shadows slithered along the walls, across the floor, and from the ceiling hung dark shapes, writhing and whispering. The faceless figure stood at the center, arms outstretched, commanding the chaos around it. Radio static swirled into intelligible words. "You cannot leave. You will stay forever." The atrium was enormous, far larger than it should be, filled with reflections of the shadows I had passed before, each screaming silently. Every instinct screamed for me to flee, but the exit seemed impossibly far. The floor warped beneath my feet, the walls pulsated, and the air grew heavier, thick with dread. I realized with growing terror that I was witnessing the heart of the rest stop. The central intelligence, feeding on fear, warping reality, preparing to trap me like countless others. The whispers grew louder, forming words I could barely comprehend. "Join us. Belong." I sprinted toward the only light I could see, a small crack in the far wall. Shadows surged, crawling faster than anything human, and the faceless figure advanced silently, deliberately. I leapt through the crack, tumbling onto the highway outside. The rain hit me instantly, soaking me, and the fog rolled across the asphalt like a living thing. I glanced back. The rest stop looked normal again, abandoned, silent, as if nothing had ever happened. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was waiting, watching, patiently. The whispers and shadows had faded for now, but the radio in my pocket hissed one final warning. "We are always here." My heart pounded, and I drove away faster than I ever had, knowing I had survived physically, but my mind, my fear, would remain trapped inside that nightmare forever. And one day I knew it would call again. It was supposed to be a routine overnight highway check. The rain hammered against my cruiser, painting the deserted stretch of Interstate 84 in dark, reflective streaks. I had a tip about an abandoned motel just off the exit, the kind of place locals avoid after sundown. They said vandals went in, but no one came out. I turned onto the gravel driveway, tires crunching against broken asphalt, and the neon sign flickered weakly. Sunset Inn, vacancy. The building was blackened with age, windows boarded up or shattered, and a strange fog seemed to cling to the foundation, curling upward like smoke. As I approached the front door, my radio hissed to life with static, then a faint whisper, "Check the back room. They're waiting." I froze, gripping my flashlight. The front lobby was empty, decayed, and smelled of mold and rot. But the whispering grew louder, now coming from behind the walls themselves. I stepped cautiously down the hallway. Peeling wallpaper flapped like ghostly wings. Then, in a cracked mirror, I saw someone standing behind me. Not reflected properly. Just there. Pale, thin, faceless, and moving like a shadow tethered to the wall. I spun around. Empty hallway. The whispers became coherent, urgent. "Don't stay. Don't let them see you." Something in the air vibrated, like the motel itself was alive, breathing, and hungry for anyone daring to enter its rooms. I forced myself forward, every step echoing against the cracked tiles of the lobby floor. The air smelled of mildew and something metallic, almost like blood. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered sporadically, leaving long stretches of shadow that seemed to shift as I moved. I reached the first room on the left, the door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the bed was shredded, sheets torn, mattress blackened with rot, and scratched words on the wall read, "They are hungry." My flashlight flickered, and I felt it. A cold pressure on my shoulders, like invisible hands trying to push me back. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway stretched endlessly now, longer than it had been before. The whispers grew louder, moving from room to room, following me, echoing in voices that sounded eerily like my own. Then I saw movement in the shadows. A figure crouched at the end of the hall, pale skin shining faintly in the dim light. No eyes, only hollow sockets that seemed to pierce through me. It started to crawl toward me, unnaturally fast, moving on elbows and knees that bent the wrong way. I stumbled backward, knocking into a wooden chair, the sound deafening in the silence. The radio on my shoulder crackled, though I hadn't touched it. Check the basement, or never leave. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to go down there, but I had no choice. I descended the creaking wooden stairs toward the basement, flashlight trembling in my hand. The air grew colder with every step, and a damp, musty smell mixed with the faint tang of iron made my stomach churn. The basement was massive, almost cavernous, with exposed pipes that dripped water rhythmically, echoing like the heartbeat of the building itself. In the corners, shadows moved unnaturally, stretching and bending as if alive. Then I saw them. Dozens of shapes pressed against the walls, human-sized, faceless, their bodies writhing silently, their movements synchronized like some horrifying ritual. I froze, gripping my gun, and the radio on my shoulder whispered, "They know you're here." A low, guttural sound started to resonate from the floorboards beneath me, vibrating up through my boots and into my spine. The shapes began to advance, their pale hands reaching out, the tips of their fingers elongated, razor sharp. I tried to back away, but the stairs behind me vanished into shadow, leaving only the basement and the advancing horrors. I turned to run across the concrete floor, and every step echoed like a gunshot. The whispers grew into screams, but no sound came from their mouths. It was in my head, in my chest, in my very bones. And then I realized the far wall wasn't solid. Something was coming through it. The far wall started to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone, twisting and folding in impossible angles. From it emerged a mass of faces, pressed together, mouths open in silent screams, eyes staring through me with malevolent hunger. My heart raced as the floor beneath me vibrated, echoing 1,000 whispers at once. I tried to aim my flashlight at the mass, but the beam bent around it, refusing to illuminate its true form. I swung my gun, but it passed through the faces as if they were smoke. The whispers became intelligible. Every voice I had ever heard in my life, twisted and mocking. "You cannot leave. You belong to us." I stumbled backward, crashing into a stack of old crates. Dust exploded into the air, making me cough and choke. When I looked up, the faces had multiplied, now crawling along the ceiling, the walls, even the floor. The basement had become an endless labyrinth of shadows and grotesque visages. My radio shrieked in static, then a cold, feminine voice hissed, "Close your eyes, or become one of us." I did, and the darkness itself seemed to wrap around me, pressing, suffocating, consuming every inch of my body. I knew if I opened them again, I might not be human anymore. I finally forced my eyes open, and I was no longer in the basement. I was in a long, endless hallway, lined with cracked mirrors. My reflection didn't move with me. It lagged seconds behind, twisting into grotesque versions of myself. The whispers followed, echoing off the glass. "You're already ours." Each mirror reflected a different horror. My own death, the faces of the motel's previous victims, shadowy figures standing just behind me that I could not see in reality. I ran, but my reflection walked toward me slower than I moved, arms outstretched as if trying to pull me in. Then one mirror shattered violently on its own, sending jagged shards across the floor. From the cracks emerged hands, pale and skeletal, reaching for me, grabbing at my boots, pulling me closer. I stumbled, falling into the shards, cutting my hands, and the blood on my skin didn't hurt. It was cold, icy, like touching the corpse of the past. The hallway seemed infinite, and every mirror showed a new variation of horror, a new nightmare, each worse than the last. I realized then that this motel didn't just trap bodies, it trapped souls. And mine was next. The air grew thick, almost viscous, pressing down on me as I limped along the hallway. Whispering voices came from inside the walls themselves, not soft murmurs, but voices screaming in anger, sorrow, and hunger. The radio crackled to life with my own voice yelling, "Run!" I slammed it off, but the whispers grew louder. Holes appeared in the drywall, revealing hollow eye sockets staring at me from the black void beyond. I could hear footsteps moving parallel to mine, faster and slower, closer and farther away. Yet no sound reached my ears, only the vibrations in my chest. I tried to scream, but my voice came out distorted, alien. Then the ceiling above me collapsed in a cascade of plaster, revealing a dark figure suspended in midair. Faceless, dripping a black liquid, limbs twisting in ways no human body could. I scrambled backward and tripped over broken furniture, falling into a room littered with torn mattresses. Inside, the faces of the motel's victims stared from every corner. One stepped forward, pale hand outstretched. "Stay. Forever." And the room began to rotate, walls bending, floors shifting, gravity pulling me toward the figure in the center. I finally stopped in a large room at the end of the hallway. The walls were lined with doors, hundreds of them, stretching infinitely in all directions. Each door whispered, calling my name, offering a promise I couldn't resist. Safety, escape, death. I tried a door at random. Inside, I saw myself, sitting, screaming, trapped in a room that mirrored reality but distorted. I slammed it shut, only to realize the room was spinning. Another door appeared where there was none. I turned the knob. The handle was icy cold, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. The whispers grew louder all at once, all screaming in agony. My radio crackled violently, throwing sparks. And from the nearest door, a faceless figure stepped out. Pale skin dripping wet, long fingers curling into claws, eyes voids that burned into my soul. It didn't move toward me. It moved through me, phasing like shadow and flesh combined, leaving me paralyzed. The doors multiplied, the figure multiplied, and the room became a labyrinth of horrors, each worse than the last, each demanding I surrender my very being. I found a single door that was different. Plain, wooden, unmarked. I approached, my pulse hammering in my ears. The whispers quieted, almost respectful. My hand reached the knob, and a torrent of screams erupted from the walls. Hundreds of voices in agony. I twisted the knob and entered a hallway that looked normal. Fluorescent lights flickering above, clean carpet, and walls free of decay. Relief washed over me, until I saw the shadows in the corners, crawling slowly toward me. My own reflection appeared on a polished wall, eyes black as voids, grinning. The radio in my hand turned itself on, Don't let them follow. I ran, hearing footsteps behind me, soft at first, then pounding, echoing from multiple directions. The hallway stretched further than possible, doors appearing and disappearing. I had no choice. I had to keep moving. Every step brought the whispers closer, closer to my mind, trying to lure me into the walls, into the motel itself. I realized then that the motel never ends. It exists outside of time, feeding on fear, feeding on life. I burst through a door and found myself back in the motel parking lot. The rain had stopped, but fog clung to the asphalt like a living thing. The cruiser was gone. The road stretched infinitely, swallowed by mist. I thought I'd escaped until I saw them. Dozens of faceless figures emerging from the fog, surrounding the motel, silent, unmoving, waiting. My heart pounded, and I realized the whispers had not stopped. They were inside me, in my head, reminding me of everything I had seen. I tried to move, but my feet felt like stone. From the shadows, a figure approached, the tallest, most menacing, its face a swirling void, hands reaching like branches. I dropped my flashlight. The fog swallowed the beam. The figure stopped inches from me and whispered, "You can never leave." Not really. My knees buckled as the world seemed to tilt, and the last thing I saw before darkness took me completely was the motel sign flickering once more. Vacancy. I woke up in my own bed. Sunlight poured through the blinds. Everything seemed normal. My cruiser was in the driveway. The motel was nowhere in sight. Relief flooded me until I heard it. A faint whisper, coming not from outside, but from inside my radio on the kitchen counter, left over from last night's patrol. I froze. It said my name. And then, chillingly, one final phrase. Next shift. Same room, same motel. I dropped the radio, but it crackled to life again. The whispering didn't stop. It had followed me home. The motel was not a place you leave. It's a place that leaves you. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the endless hallways, the faceless figures, and heard the whispers calling my name. And I knew someday I would have to go back. I always believed night shifts were peaceful, quiet, lonely, and easy money. But that was before I took a temporary job at Northridge Storage and Shipping, a massive warehouse on the edge of town. The building looked abandoned from the outside. Foggy windows, flickering exterior lights, and tall weeds growing through cracked concrete. The supervisor, Mr. Kent, handed me a clipboard and spoke in a low voice. "Don't wander into Section D." I laughed nervously. "Why? Mold issue? Rats?" He stared at me, expression blank, eyes unblinking. "No, because people who go into Section D don't come back." I thought he was joking, some initiation prank for new workers. But when I walked inside the warehouse, the air felt heavy, almost alive. The lights hummed overhead, rows of shelves disappearing into darkness. Something was off. Not scary. Not yet. Just wrong. Every few minutes, I swore I heard footsteps echoing somewhere deep in the building. But whenever I turned toward the sound, nothing was there. Only stacked crates and long aisles disappearing into pitch black. On the radio clipped to my vest, a voice whispered, so soft I thought maybe I imagined it. "Don't go into Section D." I froze. No one else was scheduled that night, and I hadn't pressed the radio button. The deeper I walked into the warehouse, the colder the air became. My breath turned into fog, like I had stepped into a freezer. The overhead lights flickered in a slow pattern, one row at a time, like they were leading me somewhere. I radioed again. Mr. Kent? Did you switch the lights to motion mode? Nothing. Just static. Then footsteps. Not light, cautious ones, but slow, heavy, deliberate boots stepping on concrete from somewhere behind the shelves. I swallowed hard and gripped my flashlight. Hello? Anyone here? The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, without warning, the lights over Section D, the restricted area, turned on all at once. Rows of shelves glowed under the artificial light. A narrow path opened between them, like the warehouse was inviting me. I should have turned around. I should have walked out the exit door and never returned. But curiosity pulled me forward. One more step. My flashlight flickered. On the concrete floor in faded red paint. No exit beyond this point. The air shifted. The warehouse suddenly felt like a living thing, like I had just crossed a boundary, like I wasn't alone anymore. The deeper I moved into Section D, the more wrong the air felt. Heavy, suffocating, almost wet. My footsteps echoed. Then, a whisper. Soft female. Right behind me. Turn back. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. No one. The shelves around me were towering walls of metal and crates stretching upward into pitch-black shadows. The smell changed, like rotting wood mixed with cold metal. My radio crackled alive again. Shh! Don't go further! Shh! The voice wasn't Mr. Kent's. It was someone else's. Someone scared. I lifted the radio closer. Who is this? Where are you? A panicked reply came through. I'm still here. Section D doesn't let you leave. Then, a blood-curdling scream tore through the speaker. I dropped the radio. It smashed on the concrete floor, pieces scattering under the shelves. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. I wasn't alone. Something was moving between the aisles, too fast to be human. I saw a shadow dart across the far end of the aisle, a tall, thin shape. The warehouse groaned as if the steel beams were bending. I whispered to myself, just finish the shift. It's all in your head, but the warehouse disagreed. The farthest light shut off. Then the next. Then the next. Darkness was coming toward me, like something was walking with it. I backed into the nearest aisle, gripping my flashlight with shaking hands. The darkness swallowed the far end of the warehouse, inching closer, light by failing light. I turned left, then right. The rows of towering shelves now looked identical. A maze. I tried controlling my breathing, but the air felt heavier here, thicker. Then I heard it. Not footsteps, not whispers. Breathing. Slow, deep, ragged breathing, coming from inside one of the crates. I stepped closer, shining my flashlight on the wooden box marked, "Property of Section D, do not open." My radio was shattered, so I had no backup. The crate trembled. Once, twice. Then something inside scratched against the wood. Slowly, deliberately. My adrenaline spiked. "Nope," I whispered, backing away. But as I turned around, the breathing stopped. The scratching stopped. Everything went silent. Until, thud, something huge slammed into the inside of the crate, making the entire shelf shake. Then another thud. Then a low growl vibrated through the metal racks. A sound I've never heard from any animal or human. I dropped my flashlight. It hit the floor and spun, its beam shining upward. That's when I saw it. Through the narrow spaces between the crates, a pale, distorted hand, fingers too long, joints bent the wrong direction, reaching out, searching. The crate wasn't just holding something, it was barely containing it. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I backed away from the crate. Whatever was inside wasn't human. No person could move with that kind of force. I didn't dare look away from the pale hand still prying through the crack. Then, from somewhere behind me, click, a light switch. I spun around. At the end of the aisle stood a man, at least someone shaped like one. He wore an old highway patrol uniform, but it was wrong. Too clean, too stiff, almost like a costume. He didn't move at first, just stood there, staring. I raised my flashlight, voice trembling. "Sir, are you okay?" "We need to get out of here." He stepped forward, a slow, unnatural glide. His chin tilted slightly, his eyes locked on me. Then he smiled. No teeth, just darkness. He lifted one hand and pointed directly at the crate behind me. I turned and saw the crate now split open just enough for a face to press through. Not a full face, just an eye. Huge, colorless, reflecting my flashlight beam like a predator's. The aisle lights blinked one by one, racing toward me. Pop, pop, pop. Everything went dark. And in that darkness, both the crate and the man vanished. The silence was overwhelming. I reached blindly, gripping the metal shelf for balance. The air smelled like rust and old chemicals. Then the warehouse intercom crackled to life. But no one was supposed to be here except me. A distorted voice whispered, "He never should have opened it." My legs nearly buckled. "I didn't open anything," I whispered, even though no one could hear me. The intercom hissed again, louder. "Run!" That word snapped something inside me. I sprinted toward the loading dock, using the faint exit sign as a guide. Suddenly, all the warehouse lights flashed back on at full power, blinding white. Rows of crates now had deep claw marks across them, as if something had been tearing its way out for hours. I passed the security desk. The CCTV monitors were no longer showing empty aisles. They were showing me. Every camera feed showed me running from different angles, and in every angle, something tall and pale was following me, just out of frame, moving when I moved, stopping when I froze. My knees weakened as realization hit. It wasn't trapped anymore. It was free, and it wanted me. I bolted toward the nearest emergency exit. The glowing red sign above the metal door looked like salvation. When I pushed on it, the door didn't lead outside. Instead, I found myself in a narrow corridor with concrete walls and condensation dripping from overhead pipes. I backed up to recheck the door. The warehouse was gone. No shelves, no lights, no crates. Just endless gray hallway stretching both directions. What the hell is happening? A fluorescent light flickered above me. And for a split second, I saw something reflected in the pipe's metal surface. A tall shape, standing right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. My breathing became erratic. I started walking fast down the hallway. Then I noticed the floor numbers painted on the concrete. D14, D15, D16. The numbers increased as I moved. When I stopped, they kept increasing. The building was shifting around me. Then, from behind, I heard a long scraping, like metal dragging against cement. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. The corridor ended abruptly at a steel door with no handle. Before I could react, the scraping sound stopped, and the door opened on its own. The room inside was massive, empty, and completely silent. But not normal silence. Dead silence. My footsteps didn't echo. My breathing didn't make sound. Even my heartbeat felt muted inside my chest. It was like sound itself didn't exist here. In the far corner stood a lone metal table with a VHS tape placed neatly on it. The label read, "For Patrol Officer Marshall, that was me." Hands shaking, I approached and inserted it into the old TV cart beside the table. The footage was grainy at first. Then a familiar scene appeared. Me, entering the warehouse earlier that night. Timestamp correct, camera angle correct. But beside me on the screen was the tall man in the patrol uniform, walking with me. He wasn't there in real life, but on the tape, he leaned toward my ear and whispered, "You should have stayed outside." The TV shut off. Behind me, I heard breathing again. Close. So close I felt it on my neck. I spun around, swinging the flashlight. And suddenly, I was back. The warehouse aisles, the crates, the cold air, like nothing had happened. Except, the exit door was now wide open. Moonlight spilled across the loading dock ramp outside. Freedom, I didn't think. I just ran, sprinting toward that sliver of real world. As soon as I reached it, a hand grabbed my shoulder, not human. Bone-thin fingers wrapped around me like wire. I was pulled backward with unnatural force. But as I fell, my hand caught the emergency fire axe mounted near the doorway. Instinct took over. I swung. The blade sliced through the air and connected. A deafening shriek filled the warehouse, rattling every crate. The hand released. I scrambled up, slipping on the polished concrete floor, and burst through the exit into the night. Cold, breathable air filled my lungs. When I turned back, the open door closed by itself, and all the warehouse lights shut off. The next morning, police and corporate supervisors arrived. They claimed the warehouse had been vacant for years. No inventory system, no active cameras, no crates, just dust and emptiness. But here's the part that still keeps me awake. They showed me warehouse security footage from that night. The cameras recorded nothing except me, running, screaming, swinging at the air with an axe. There was never anyone else in the frame. When the police finished questioning me, a supervisor handed me a non-disclosure agreement. "Accidents happen," he said. "But sometimes, people see more than they should." I tried to resign the next day. Corporate refused. "We need experienced patrol officers," they told me. This morning I received my new assignment. Section D. Warehouse reopening night shift report at 11:45 p.m. That's in 20 minutes. And outside the warehouse door, I swear I just heard something breathing. As the night fades and the highway stretches endlessly before you, remember this. These horrors aren't just stories. They are echoes of the unknown, whispers of darkness that linger where you least expect them. Every abandoned rest stop, every shadow on the roadside, every flicker of neon in the fog may hold more than it seems. These tales remind us that fear is not just in our minds. It can be real, tangible, and patient, waiting for the next traveler to wander too far. But even in the deepest terror, there is a lesson. Vigilance, awareness, and courage are the only lights that can guide you safely through the darkness. So next time you drive alone at night, listen closely, because you never know what might be watching. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and remember, some roads are better left unexplored.